Hey, hi everyone back home. Welcome to the second season of the Salt City Index. I'm your host, Mo Moodie, and I'm super excited to have today's guest on. Once again, for tuning in. This is a podcast where we go around Syracuse City and the greater Onondaga County area, and we interview influencers in the area. And today we have someone who's running for public office. And before I introduce today's guest, we'll let you know that I first ran into this gentleman at a nonprofit political event, and he came over to me first and was like, "Hey, I would like to introduce myself." And I was like, "Wow, there are people that look like me on the right side of the spectrum," and that was very pleasing and very exciting. So, with any other hesitation, I'd like to introduce today Caleb Slater. Say hi.
Hey, thank you, Mo. And you know what? It was great meeting you. And it's funny how we're in the digital space, because before I had met you, I was very impressed with all the videos that you were putting out in your race that year. And here we are about a year later, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for your kind words. Well, for the viewers and the voters and the constituents back home who may not know who you are, just give a little quick, elevator pitch, kind of like who you are, what election you're running for and what area that covers.
Well, sure. Thanks, Mo. And for the people watching at home, my name's Caleb Slater. I'm the only lifelong New Yorker in the race for New York State Senate District 48, which covers two counties, Cayuga County, where I've spent most of my adult life, and Auburn specifically, and Onondaga County. That includes the city of Syracuse, everything south of it, and most towns west of it, except for Solvay, Geddes, and Camillus. My reason for jumping into this race is I think that it's important that we have representative government, meaning representatives who are very similar to us. Having grown up in the Finger Lakes region in a small farm town of Dundee, New York, I understand a lot of the culture of the small towns across Cayuga County and southern Onondaga County. Being a graduate of Cayuga Community College in Auburn and having worked there and lived there for many years, I understand the concerns people have there, and everything from a need for a thriving downtown, the impact that crime and drugs, especially the opioid epidemic, has had, the need for improving mental health resources. And currently, I live in the city of Syracuse. I live in Eastwood, and one of the biggest issues our city is facing is affordable housing. And as somebody with a background in real estate, somebody who is an owner-occupant of a multi-unit property in the city of Syracuse, this is something that my background brings a lot to the table in being able to address. So I'm really running to represent each unique area of the district, the rural upstate New York Finger Lakes region, the city of Syracuse, and the city of Auburn.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's pretty cool. So do you think having your story start from a small rural town, low income, has that influenced your views on economics, how you're going to be running for this particular office? Does that have any impact at all, or just curious?
Mo, I would absolutely say that my upbringing gives me a lot of compassion for the people who are in our community. I mean, my earliest memories were in the broken foster care system. I was fortunate to be adopted by my mother at the age of 7, and then she got sick when I was 12, and her sister, my Aunt Mildred, became my caregiver. And so the importance of paying it forward and serving others is something that I've learned from those who raised me. My aunt was a nurse by profession. She helped nurse her father back to health when he was sick, her son when he got into an accident. When she got older, she just wanted to keep serving and helping. So she adopted a little girl with autism. She took over my mother's finances and helped when she needed, my brother and I. And so when I look at what's happening in our country and our community, 63% of the country living paycheck to paycheck, 85% of the student body in the Syracuse City School District having parents that gross less than $39,000 per year annually. That's gross, not net. When I look at all of these issues, I think part of the reason why we're not seeing comprehensive solutions to the problems is because many of our representatives can't relate to the people who are barely getting by. I mean, we have a lot of representatives with Ivy League degrees or lawyers or doctors, and no knock on people who are successful. I think it's great if you're successful, but if you want to be an advocate for the downtrodden, I think the best people to be able to do that are those who have walked in their shoes. No different than in drug counseling. You have someone who survived addiction that helps counsel those people, or a lot of veterans organizations have fellow veterans that are counseling them. So I think it's very similar in this case of policy as well.
Yeah, definitely a good point there. I mean, it's when you think about creating policy, it's like, are you creating it for yourself or are you creating for the entire community? And if you have a wide perspective, you can able to create it for both sides of the spectrum. I mean, right. With that being said, like as you started to develop and grow and get older, like you had a successful career in real estate, right? You were very successful, you know, in that part. Any takeaways from like that? I guess that would have to apply to like your housing concepts, or what's your takeaway from real estate? Do you feel like that would have any value to what you're running and what you're applying for on the political spectrum?
Yes, I think it does have value in what I'm applying for, and it does apply to several different things that I relate on the campaign. So first and foremost, when I look at my experience of 3 years in commercial working with large industrial clients in 47 out of the 50 states, I saw the policies that were working in states like Tennessee, North Carolina, actually the Dakotas too. Not a lot of people talk about the Dakotas, where they have lower corporate tax rate, where they have more freedom on the economic freedom index. People are flocking there. But if you look at states like New York, we're leading the nation in outward migration. We have way too much red tape, way too much regulation, and our tax burden is the highest in the country. And so being able to look at what states have done successfully, not just from reading a report, but I've actually walked through manufacturing sites with representatives of government, heads of economic development councils, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and can understand what is working well in places like Nashville, Tennessee, and how we can implement those types of things here in Syracuse. And that's just from an economic policy standpoint. What I can also say is in working in the residential side of real estate more recently in central New York, I've seen a massive need for getting more people involved in the trades. That's one of the things I'm passionate about. I'm a supporter of vocational education, BOCES education, because there's a long wait for electricians and different services, which is not only causing problems for consumers, but there's also a situation we're running into where we're not keeping up with the rate of replacement. And I think the push for college has been something that has not only inflated the cost of college, but it's left a lot of people out of high school, either with a large amount of debt or not knowing that there's now an entire need of people to be electricians and plumbers and steam fitters and linemen, where they can make really good money right out of high school. So those are just two examples that come to my mind from a business and economic standpoint, and also from an education standpoint, that I've learned from my years of working in both commercial and now more recently residential real estate.
You know, I threw my hat in the commercial real estate industry for short-lived when I was a younger man. So I tip my hat to you. You know, it's not an easy, you know, like real estate, but it's rewarding, and it definitely gives you an insight, especially like going to like Dakotas and Tennessee and like across the country, that you can definitely take those outside concepts that are doing well and bring it here. I think that's definitely a breath of fresh air, because a lot of times people are just so focused on like, hey, Syracuse, right? But like there's more to the world, and we can learn from our, you know, from our neighbors. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
I know you went to, you know, community college, but you also went to Ithaca College, correct? Right? Is that
that's true? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Right. And what degree did you pursue when you were there? Like, did you carry over?
Sure. At Cayuga Community College, I have an associate's in applied science in media production with a specialization in film production. And then when I went to Ithaca College, I studied television and radio production with which is my BS, and then a minor in legal studies. So I had no desire in the picking of my major to work in the political realm, but it's funny how things get shifted as you move on with time, I'm happy to share a little bit about this in our interview, but I went into Ithaca College admiring Martin Scorsese and walked out admiring Antonin Scalia.
Interesting perspectives.
Yeah.
You know, I look back at my college days. I was more interested in like strolling and chanting and being at keggers, and doing like fun things with my frat. But shout out to like the Nalfo Greeks. But you in college, like you were very active politically. Like you were really good at arguing both sides of a political issue, which I think is unique. Especially when it comes to working across the aisle. Once you get elected. Do you think that has any shape in your goals, or like do you bring that energy from college with you into this election?
Well, I'm so glad that you asked that question, because I do pride myself in seeing all sides of an argument and trying to be nonpartisan on all sorts of issues. I think it stems from the fact that I was raised by a Democrat family in a Republican town. I mean, Dundee, New York is a deep Republican. Yates County is a deep Republican part of our state. But my family, with a few exceptions, they're Obama voters. They are, they're Democrats. But that also translated in college, where I went to a very progressive college, not even liberal, but like Ithaca is so far left that my liberal relatives who drive Hummers would say, "I'll see you at Christmas," because those people are crazy. But it gave me a huge education, where I'm consuming conservative media, from the Daily Wire to Fox News to Ben Shapiro and at the time Rush Limbaugh, who has since passed, and having professors, and even my academic professor, which was interesting. My Ithaca College Republican's academic professor was not a Republican. He was actually a member of the Green Party. But the reason why he became the advisor, the faculty advisor for a conservative campus organization, is because he, on the free speech issue, was more of an old school liberal. He said, you know what, I may not agree with everything you have to say, but I think it's important for you to have a right to say it on campus. And so he was a very neutral strategic partner, and I was very appreciative to see that there were people on that campus that were allowing of that. So yeah, being at a very progressive campus, I heard a lot of liberal arguments. But then also went to a lot of conservative conferences, from CPAC to I was a member of Young Americans for Freedom, which was the organization founded by William F. Buckley. And that group owns Ronald Reagan's ranch. So that ought to tell you where they stand on the spectrum.
Right.
And then I was also the captain of my college's speech and debate team. And when you're on a professional debate team, it's a sport like anything else. You are going to be told this is your side of the argument that you're going to have to debate. And so I had to leave my personal views out of it. And sometimes I argued a liberal position, other times a conservative position, other times a libertarian position. Sometimes I even had to take a progressive position. But it made me more appreciative of the issues, because I had to have empathy and understanding of all political philosophies.
That's huge. That's important. Somehow, somewhere, like I feel like our country's become like us versus them, blue versus red. Like left versus right. And we're just Americans. Let's not lose sight of that. And we're all trying to help, everyone be happy, and we just have different views of how to get to the end goal, because the end goal is still the same. Like if you really distill it down, like we all want safer streets, right? We want our kids to be safe, right? And we want education to be good, and we want to be able to have like a roof overhead and not have to worry about, the check coming from next month. But, I grew up in the inner city, Brooklyn projects, a housing development, and low income, and a lot of struggles. I mean, you also grew up in, the rural area, but you also from a single mom in the foster care. Do you feel like that upbringing and that background also has been shaping like how you, because like your rhetoric is a lot about the family unit, and strengthening the family unit. So this platform, do you want to expand anything deeper? Is that a talking point for you?
I do want to expand that deeper and say that while I was raised by a single mother, I don't think I would be where I am today if it wasn't for the fact that I had uncles, if I didn't have coaches, if I didn't have positive male role models in my life. I mean, the statistics are monumental. Kids who don't grow up with a father figure in their house or in their life are more likely to deal drugs, more likely to end up in jail, less likely to graduate from high school. I mean, there's all sorts of societal decay, not just individual decay, that translates to that unfortunate situation. That's why I'm very supportive of organizations that are trying to provide apprenticeship and mentorship. I have said on the campaign trail, and I'm happy to share again here, that I would open my office up to kids in the inner city if they need a place to study, if they need someone to talk to, if they need somewhere to go because it's just there's too much noise in their neighborhood. I think that we need to, as male role models, find the places where there's kids who don't have that and be that in any capacity that we can. And that's really a passion of mine. It's one of the things that I talked about when it came to the recent burglaries in Westcott, is that, yes, I'm tough on crime once the crimes have been committed, but if you're not addressing the underlying causes of broken families, fatherless households, poverty, lack of jobs, lack of after-school programs for the kids, then all you're going to be doing is just throwing more and more kids into juvenile detention centers, and there's no preventative measures to address the underlying causes. So I support comprehensive approach to this issue.
I'm glad you bring that up because, like, I see that way too often, especially when people are running on the political spectrum, that politicians typically, not you yourself, but they're just treating like the top part of the issue. And you got to get to the root cause, and growing up like in the struggle and having challenges, you really know what the root causes are, and that's not getting treated. So the fact that you have that already on your focus gives me a lot of confidence, you know what I mean, for you to be, running for this, this spot. But, having that unique background, because like growing up with, a Democratic family in like a Republican area, like your energy policy views, you know what I mean, are unique. You know what I mean? Not unique, but like it's a good balance of like left and right. But did you want to talk about that? Because like I think that's a talking point that most people from the right side aren't maybe addressing.
Yeah. So again, from my experience, one of the speakers that we had when I was involved with the Ithaca College Republicans was Bob Inglis. He's a former congressman from South Carolina. That's not a blue state. It's one of the most conservative states in the union. But he founded an organization called Republic EN, which is a group of conservative Republicans that are leading on the energy sector of smart, sound energy, where we're reducing our carbon footprint. So I think it's perfectly logically consistent to say that there have been changes in our climate, but coercion and force by the government, especially when other countries like China and India aren't following the same suit, isn't going to address this. I mean, it's undeniable that New York State doesn't have the same snow that we did 10, 20 years ago. That's an easy example for me to go to. But I also don't believe that the forced electrification of our state, forcing electric buses, forcing people off of their gas stove, and they say, well, it's only for new construction. Well, that's actually going to be costly because the development is what we need. This is an example of a regulation that's actually going to significantly hurt the housing business. But I can point to the flaws of the Albany bureaucrats that are trying to legislate morality, but also point to the good that's being done in the private sector on this space. At one point in time, I sold Hondas at Fox Honda in Auburn, New York, while I was looking for another job when I finished college. I like the hybrids. I think they're a great balance. I think they're more affordable than, say, for example, a Tesla, and more consumers are shifting towards that. I think a balanced grid is a good thing, too. I like a combination of natural gas and hydroelectric power. I'm in favor of nuclear. I think it's great that it's a clean energy. It pays very good jobs. And I've even had the opportunity on the campaign trail to visit farmers in places like Aurora Dairy that do biofuels, and they operate their farm strictly on the biofuels, and then they have overages in the winter, and there's about 200 to 300 houses that they're powering using biofuels. So I don't think it's a bad thing to invest in green energy, like tier 1 and tier 2 solar I support, which is when somebody puts it on their own house or their own property. Once we start going after agricultural land in upstate New York with the tier 3 solar, or the proposed wind projects in southern Onondaga County, which the local residents in Tully, Otisco, and Lafayette did not want, or when the state starts mandating that you have to have an electric vehicle, like in 2035, you have to have electric school buses. That's when I have a problem. I think we need to trust the innovators in this space to continue to work on it, and consumers will naturally shift to those products if they are better.
It's interesting you bring up like nuclear, because like a lot of times that can be like a hot topic for some people, like a hot button, like, whoa, nuclear, energy. But I've been living in upstate New York, and our neighbor Oswego, there's a nuclear power plant right there on the lake. You know what I mean? And we're all fine. You know what I mean? Everyone's fine. So like shouldn't shy away from it. But definitely sounds like you have a good understanding of like the lay of the land, and that's good to have someone as an elected official going into your seat. But you also have great campaign experience. Like I'm pretty sure in the midterm elections in 2022, weren't you like a mega big boss? Weren't you like a big shot caller? In charge of like 150 people. Like I'm pretty sure that has had some impact on your like political strategy and campaigning.
That is absolutely true. I was fortunate to be a regional director in a statewide election in North Carolina for a U.S. Senate race in 2022. We had a team of over 100 people. At one point at the peak of the operation, I had over 150 people that were reporting to me, that I was calling, that I was texting, that I was messaging every single day on their grassroots operations, meaning they had to hit doors, hit neighborhoods. I was helping them with where to hit, getting them the literature, helping them with messaging, and it made a difference. Ted Budd, who was our client, was the only Republican in a swing state throughout all of the United States in 2022 that won the general election by over 5.
High five.
Yes. So the follow up with that, though, that experience has translated into this election, both in the primary with the over 5,500 doors that I personally knocked on, and our team has collectively knocked on over 20,000 doors in the general election. And that, I think, is going to make a difference come election day. I mean, people want to spend money on mail. They want to spend money on what they think is the easiest thing to do, because it is easier than going out and organizing and meeting all of those people and mobilizing. But people won't forget when a candidate shows up at their door. They will forget when a candidate sends them a postcard in the mail.
Do they even look at it? Like, oh.
They don't even read it. They don't even read it. 6 seconds is the national statistic, that you've got 6 seconds on a postcard before it gets thrown in the trash.
I mean, I'm not an elected official. I did run for a county ledge, and I remember knocking on someone's door, and they're like, "Why are you talking to me?" I'm like, "Because you're in my district. I'm going to represent you. I want to talk to you." And even now, I still see the person every now and then, in the neighborhood. And they're like, "Hey, man, hey, what's up?" What's going on?
I remember you.
Yeah, I remember you. They actually remember you. So it's cool that you're knocking on doors and getting out there, in front of the public. But I heard some jiggling. Or you have you own a dog, right? Aren't you like an animal lover, right?
I do. Where is he? Yeah. Johnny, come here, Johnny. Come here. He's coming.
What type of dog do you have?
Oh yeah, this is a. He's gonna say. Johnny's gonna say hi.
Hey,
Johnny's a Shizan. He's a combination of a Shih Tzu and a Bichon Frise. So he just turned 11 or 12 this year.
Oh, wow.
And I had trained him. He was my aunt's dog. And when she wanted to get him, I was still in high school at the time. And she said, "Well, I'll get a dog, but you have to walk it."
Yeah.
So I walked him, and I helped potty train him when he was just a baby. I mean, she got him as a baby, and she kept him till, unfortunately, she passed away earlier this year. But thank you. She left the dog with me, so she still lives on through Johnny. And outside of that, and I haven't been doing as much in these final days of the campaign, but I am a dog trainer through Clear Path for Veterans. I had a dog last year before I had Johnny that I was watching for about 6 or 8 months in training, and I had classes every week, and I had every homework I had to do every week to help it become a service dog. And then I still am a what they call a flex foster parent, which means when one of their trainers or foster parents is out for the weekend or a week, then they go to their flex fosters to watch the dog for a week or a weekend. And I still do that from time to time. I haven't done that recently because I'm just so focused on this campaign, but it is something that I will get back to doing after November.
Just humor me for the viewers and voters back home who don't know exactly what Clear Path for Veterans is. Can you just explain like what that nonprofit is?
Oh, I would love to. Clear Path for Veterans is out of Madison County, so it's not in my state Senate district, but it is in central New York. And they have been around, I think, since the early 2010s. They have a variety of services. The dog program is their cream of the crop. That's what they really started as. Is they train service animals to give to veterans in need to help them with their PTSD, maybe blindness, emotion, that kind of thing. Official, like not just emotional support, official, trained, certified dogs that they give to veterans in need. They also will have veterans who have a dog train with them, and they may not be fully certified by the end of the course, but it provides therapy for the dog. It gives the veteran something to do. But outside of their dog program, they have free lunches for veterans. They have all sorts of volunteer opportunities for them at their location in Cazenovia. They always have activities for them. They keep them busy. And one of the things that has been very beneficial of that is a lot of our veterans, when they come back from war and they don't have something to keep them busy, then they have all these thoughts in their head, and that is very troublesome. But giving them something to get out of the house, give them meaning, give them purpose, give them something to do has been very helpful for many of the veterans. And they serve veterans all around central New York, not just Madison County, Onondaga County. Some veterans travel all the way from Auburn to their luncheons that they do, some from Oswego, some from Cortland County. So it's expanded, and it's really a nonprofit that I'm very passionate about. Most of the men in my family served in the military. My grandfather did. My uncles, who were very influential on me, served in the Marines. My brother was in the Marines. And being able to give back through that organization is something outside of my political work, is something that I care deeply about.
Clearly, you care about people. You care about vets and dogs. I mean, that's it's a win-win. Clearly they're not a bad person. Like, what do you do for your spare time? I vets and dogs. Oh, well, okay. All right, Slater, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty awesome. I know you've been really good at being like an advocate as well. From my time of interacting with you, being outspoken, I think you did a lot of good stuff for helping people that got terminated during the COVID-19, mandates. A lot of like speaking out and being an advocate. Do you feel like that background and being like outspoken and being on the debate team and like has helped you? As like you feel like that gives you a unique perspective coming into this election?
You know what? It's funny that you bring that up, because one of the things I say that people on the right should do is they should study the tactics of the left and see how we can use it with our own worldview. And they are much better at mobilization and grassroots and organizing than Republicans and conservatives are. I mean, it's just undeniable. So being able to go to an institution where I saw how they had demonstrations against the college administration or against whatever the political movement was of the time, helped me when certain movements that were going on that I wasn't happy with. I was very unhappy under the COVID lockdowns. I lived in Auburn, New York at the time, and everything was being shut down. I remember that February or March of 2021 when everything got shut down and had to go home and work from home and adjust to that. And I watched all these businesses shut down and wasn't happy with it. And I went to the very first, at least that I know of, the very first documented anti-lockdown demonstration was in Binghamton, New York. And I was there. And I stayed in contact with people who were trying to fight against the mandates. And when the nurses were suing New York State for their wrongful termination, it was roughly 34,000 nurses. I stood with them. It was the case of medical professionals of informed consent versus Bassett. And I went to the appellate court in Rochester in the courtroom and was right there with those nurses. And I rallied with them before, and I stayed in touch with many of the leaders, and many of those leaders I still stay in touch with, because there's still a lot of work that should be should be made whole. People have not received their proper back pay. Their lives were completely destroyed. And I think having that organizing background makes me a leader that, whether it's the nurses or workers or parents, if they feel an injustice, I want the people of this community to know I will march right there with them. And I think also, and I'm sorry to make this a run-on answer, I think it also stems from my family. My grandfather was a World War II veteran, came back to Jim Crow America, and he marched with Malcolm X for fair housing. You mentioned you're from Brooklyn. Well, I think Brooklyn, right?
Yep.
They had marches down there for fair housing. My grandfather was there. My grandfather marched with Dr. King at the I Have a Dream speech in the 1960s. So I've taken lessons from those who sacrificed before me. And I think it's important to fight for the causes of civil liberties to this day. And I think what happened under COVID was a violation of people's civil rights.
You definitely have leadership during a crisis situation. I think we're all going to remember the pandemic. I'm still going to talk about it as we get older. But the stand up, and speak out for people that don't have a voice or don't have the wherewithal, the mentality to. It's not easy, It's not easy to be an advocate and to take that approach. So. That's really awesome. I think, education is key. The fact that you went to college, and you graduated, right? In my understanding, I think you're a first-time graduate, no? Right? Is that for you, like college?
Yeah, none of my siblings graduated. I had an older brother who took a couple of semesters at SUNY Oneonta, but he never finished. So, of my mother's 5 kids, I'm the only that graduated.
So what do you think? I mean, I assume that you have some strong feelings about education policies then, right? You know what I mean? Regarding District 48. So what's your take? Like what's going on in District 48 and what would you like to change?
Well, I do want to see more types of education practices. And what I mean by that is we have learned over time that sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, every single week doesn't work for everyone. I think there's a lot of people that are more hands-on learners. There's people that are more technical. And I do reject the push for college. I don't regret any decisions that I've made in my life because it shaped me as to who I am. But my origin story after high school is I wanted to go into the film industry, and I didn't know that I could have just take a trade as an electrician, and then every TV station needs electricians. Every TV station needs people to keep things in operation. I wouldn't have amassed so much debt. And so showing the future of America, or really I call them the present of America, that there are other options is critical. And that's for the students element of it. The second element of it is I'm the only candidate in this race that is a product of the New York State public education system. I went to school here in New York. My opponent did not. And and it was very recently. It's 10 years ago. It wasn't like 30 years ago. So I have a perspective on what's going on right now. And one of those things is that we need to be investing in our teachers, in smaller classroom sizes. Social workers is something that they're being overloaded. My aunt Lily is a retired social worker. She worked in the New York system for a long time and then finished her career in Florida. And she had hundreds of cases. The social workers to this day will tell you the same issue that they have here, that they have too many cases, they're overloaded, they can't build a relationship with the types of families that they really need the additional support. So I think that New York has a issue where they just throw money at a problem and hope it sticks, but they're not spending the money in the best ways. You look at a state like Massachusetts, that has spending less per pupil, but yet is outperforming us. I think that's evidence that it's not the dollars themselves, it's how you invest them. And I'd like to reevaluate how we're investing our education dollars.
No, it's crucial. It's definitely crucial. It's interesting times that we live in because everyone's focus is on like children, education, and our well-being. I mean, the fact that you're already referencing like out-of-state point of views is very like confident building, for at least from my end. I don't know about the viewers back home, but it's, there's many ways to skin a cat, and if we're always just doing the same thing over and over again, we're going to get the exact same results. So I definitely like hearing that. But I mean, I think maybe some of the viewers back home want to understand, like, the tough question is going to be not for you, but it's just more of you're going up your opposition who's an incumbent. Right. And you're looking to replace that individual. And I'm not going to go into who that person is, or the negative point of view, but from a positive point of view, right? What is it that you bring to the table that's uniquely different? I mean, you've already, helping the vets, dogs. You have like a law enforcement, going to that type of background. Your environmental policies, like you have a unique perspective. You just came out of the school system per se, so that's still fresh, and you've worked here and in the States, done big things, but like, what's uniquely different? I guess what's better that you can bring to the table at this point?
Well, I think that you make an excellent point that I am going against a 3-time incumbent who's been in there. But the reason why I say that that's a disadvantage and not an advantage is because the status quo is the problem. I think we're in a unique political situation where the more time you spend in Albany is not necessarily a good thing if what Albany is doing is making things worse. So having somebody that has been impacted by the policies that are being pushed by, hey, Johnny, they're being pushed right now, is a good thing. So I think the very fact that I'm not a career politician, that I don't have an expert in deal making with Albany makes me more qualified. And I think what's important is, again, people are trying to shift the pendulum back to working across the aisle. The era of Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton working on the Contract of America, or Ronald Reagan working with Tip O'Neill. And I just had a conversation with a Democrat voter yesterday where they said Tip O'Neill was someone that they really looked up to. And again, my opponent is somebody who primaried a sitting state senator, because that last state senator, and I'll mention the last person's name, Dave Valesky, he was a part of this group called the Independent Democratic Caucus, the IDC. The IDC was a caucus of Democrats in Albany that were moderates that worked with Republicans and Democrats. I think that's a good thing that they were doing that. Yeah. But there's the new wave of politicos that think that's a bad thing. And that wave started about 6 years ago. And now I think the pendulum is moving back, where people are saying we've gone too extreme. We don't see each other's partners and neighbors and allies anymore. And we need to go back to working with each other, which is what I strive to do.
I find it humorous that I live in a world where it's like talking to your neighbor or the opposition is a bad thing. You know what I mean? Right. And I wouldn't say even the word opposition is even a little bit harsh. It's just, the person you're running against. Right. Or just talking across the aisle. I mean, the end result is we just want a better place where we live.
That's
period.
It.
That's just what we want, right? And how am I going to be able to do that if I don't know what you feel and what's going on in your side? And you're getting criticized for talking across the aisle. I think talking across the aisle is a good thing. But, I'm not an elected official, so what do I know? But I hope that you become an elected official. For sure. You definitely sound like you have a good head on your shoulders, and it's not about age or race or background. It's just who's going to represent the people the best, who's going to be an advocate and stand up and fight, for what's right, and make sure that policies are being made to better our life, not detract our life or make one group better and another group suffer.
Exactly.
I mean, you've been doing this for a while now. Now you're running, right? Is this your first time running, like on a ballot as a front runner?
Yeah, this is my first time on the ballot.
How do you feel?
Well, it's certainly surreal. I mean, having a conversation just before our interview with somebody who said, "Hey, don't worry about it. I just casted my mail-in ballot and I voted for you." It's exciting. It's humbling, and it's exciting, and really, again, it's about it's not about me, and it's about not first and foremost, it's about the community and the issues that impact them. But I think it's always important to remember where you came from. And I think my grandmother is planning on making a trip up here on election night. I spent some time talking about my grandfather. But my grandmother came to this country in the 1960s, enrolled in the City College of New York from the Dominican Republic, not knowing a word of English. And she hustled and she got her degree and she got her kids. On July 4th, 1970, they flew from the DR down to New York City, and decades later, I was the first generation born in this country. So being able to show my family that sacrificed so much for me to have the opportunities that I have today, whether it's my grandfather's side in the civil rights movement or my grandmother's side who took a risk to come here, that both of them had that shared vision that generation from now, their grandkids would have opportunities that they never would have imagined. And to me, I'm trying to make them proud and show them that their efforts were successful, if that makes sense.
Yep. Awesome. That definitely makes sense. I mean, that's pretty cool. You know, it's that's what I love about New York State. You know what I mean? Like, we're such a diverse group of people, you know what I mean? And especially like upstate New York, like, it's even better, you know? And but I guess as you're coming to the end, election is, you know, it's coming up, voting day is soon, it's around the corner. Not saying you, but I've noticed that some candidates from the right side of the spectrum don't really get a fair platform to speak about who they are and what they want to talk about. Before we, you know, come to a close, is there anything that from your election that you would love to kind of see the light of day that you feel is not getting the attention that it should?
Well, I wish that there was an actual debate that was held on this election. I mean, there's 4 being done for Congress, which I think is overkill. And the TV station said that they weren't going to do one for either of the state Senate races. They were only focused on federal, which I think is a missed opportunity, because of what I want in this, you know, you asked me the question, what people aren't realizing is I want people to realize that the state legislature does have more pull on your day-to-day life than the federal. I mean, if you look at the gas prices in Texas and you compare it to New York, there's a big difference. But we're all under the same president. We're all under the same Congress. We're all under the same U.S. Senate. So that is proof right there that your state policies make a difference on your cost of living, your schools, your police. I mean, every interaction that you have is more impacted by who's in your state office, in your local office, than your federal office. And I didn't admittedly quite realize that as much either until I was involved. And I think it's important that more and more people come to understand that.
Look, it's big. Your day-to-day life is really impacted by your local politicians. Everyone's focused on these bigger elections, but the real day-to-day life is your local individuals that are making the influence. So, yeah, we got to get you in office. You need to have you, and you're thinking, saying all the right things. So before I come to it, I guess there's anything else that you love to talk about, before we close out?
Mo, I just want to thank you again for having me on your platform. You've clearly done your homework leading into today. So you are a great host, and I really appreciate you making me feel welcome in this show. And you asked great questions, so thank you.
I'm just a regular Joe, just want to know who you are, and thank you for your kind words. You can't tell I'm blushing. I have a beard, so
yeah,
it's in there.
I think Johnny wants to say hi one more time.
All right, Johnny. Nice. Well, before I break, like always, my name is Mo Moodie. Thank you for tuning into the second season of the Salt City Index. I also want to give a big shout out to Momentous Media Group for being the official sponsor of the Salt City Index. And tune in for more episodes. And thank you 100% Slater for being on the on the podcast, on the show. And I look forward to hearing and seeing great things from you in the future.
Thank you very much. The honor was all mine.
Awesome. All righty.